Good afternoon, and welcome to the sixth of our Lunch with the League series. Before we start, I would like to make a few announcements. Please remain muted throughout the session. There will be a question and answer session after we hear from our speaker today. So if you have any questions for him, please put them in the chat directed to Chelsea Satula. Finally, I would like to advise you that this session is being recorded, and the link to the recording of each of these sessions will be available on our League website. The link to the website will be posted in the chat. And at this time, I would like to introduce our president of our local league, Betsy Patterson, who will make a few remarks about the league. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Betsy Patterson, president of our local league. The League of Women Voters was founded in 1920, 6 months before the ratification of the 19th Amendment, granting women their right to vote nationwide. It was established as a nonpartisan grassroots organization to encourage voters to become active participants in our democracy. The League has many activities, including registering voters, informing them about the issues and candidates through our voter guides and candidate forums, and getting out the vote during elections. We also educate the public about how our government works. In this series, we will interview Ventura County elected officials to learn what their roles are in the government, what skills are required, and what challenges they face. It is not a candidate forum or a campaign opportunity. It is a chance to educate the public about what they do in the day-to-day functioning of our county. Thank you for joining us. We hope you gain a better understanding of what our Ventura County elected officials do in their jobs. And now I would like to turn the program back over to Pat Essick.
Thanks. We're now going to screen share a chart that shows how our county government is organized. In this series, our intent is to focus on those county officials who are elected, and we will be interviewing them over a 7-week period. Although we have multiple county supervisors, for the purpose of this series, we will only be interviewing one of them who will share with us the various aspects of the role of county supervisor. At this time, I have the pleasure to introduce our County Auditor-Controller, Jeff Burgh. Welcome, Mr. Berg, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Mr. Berg is the elected Auditor-Controller for Ventura County and has over 27 years of public service, specializing in budget, finance, and accounting. He previously served Ventura County as the Deputy Executive Officer, assisting the county CEO in the management of the Finance and Budget Division. He also served as Chief Deputy Non-Sworn for the Ventura County Probation Agency with oversight of the agency's administrative functions. Mr. Berg received his bachelor's degree majoring in business administration, accounting theory, and practice from CSU Northridge, and his master's of public policy and administration from Cal Lutheran University, where he is currently a member of the graduate faculty in public policy, teaching on the subject of public budget and finance. He also served 6 years in the United States Army Finance Corps. Mr. Berg, could you please explain to us what the qualifications and the prerequisites are that prepare one for the role of County Auditor-Controller?
Yes, I sure can. And again, thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you today. You know, the prerequisites are spelled out in government, for all elected officials are spelled out in government code, but the Auditor Controller, particularly its code section, and I've got it here so I don't have to look at my notes. It's government code section 24200 and 26945. And there's actually 4 criteria. You only need to meet one of them, and the first one being you have currently serve as a county auditor controller or as the assistant auditor controller. Second would be you are a certified professional internal auditor, and you've also have 16 units of accounting and audit class as well, experience as well, credits as well. You also have, or you can have a possession of a bachelor's degree in accounting, and you have served within the last 5 years for 3 consecutive years as a senior finance or fiscal manager in a position of the county, city, or other public agency, or lastly, you could be a certified public accountant. But those are the prerequisites spelled out in government code that allow you to actually run for and be elected to this office. And I know that I think you also asked what might help you in that position. And I would say that having a thorough understanding and background in governmental accounting truly helps in this position because it's vastly different. Having worked for Deloitte for a number of years in Southern California as an auditor, I know that there is a difference between public accounting and private accounting, or governmental accounting and private accounting, and having that understanding of the GAFR and GASB pronouncements, it helps in this position greatly.
Okay, thank you. How long is your term, and are there term limits?
The term is pretty much the same for I call it the other 6 elected officials: the assessor, auditor, controller, myself, treasurer, tax collector, clerk, recorder, sheriff, and district attorney. It's 4-year term. There are no term limits at this time. The board of supervisors are the only county elected officials that have a term limit. They imposed on themselves, but there is none for this office.
Okay. What is your department's budget, and how many employees are in your department?
Currently, for the fiscal year coming up, because we're just developing our budget right now, our budget's right at about $16.9 million. And we have roughly 76 employees in the office. I have a few consultants and contract staff that help us out in a couple of the areas that there's probably 3 or 4 more of those. So you could probably say we have 80 people in the office, but 76 county employees.
Okay. What are the top 3 priorities or functions of your office?
Top 3 priorities or functions. I'll talk about what the office does. Is that okay? I mean, if I answer that and then get into, because our office is broken down into really 5 specific areas. As the auditor controller, and by government code, I am the auditor controller is the chief accountant for the county of Ventura. And so as the chief accountant, this office, we're responsible for all the general accounting that goes on. Payroll, the county of Ventura has 10,000 county employees. We have 16 separate unions, over 750 pay codes, and our staff pays the 10,000 employees every 2 weeks, 26 pay periods a year, to include W-2s, 1099s for independent contractors and what have you. So we're responsible for payroll, and we're also responsible for accounts payable. County of Ventura has over 20,000 vendors that we're doing business with. There's 80,000 payments that go out annually, and our staff ensures the accuracy and the timeliness of those payments going out to the vendors who are doing work for the county, for the constituents, for you. We also have our fiscal reporting department, and our fiscal reporting department is just that. They are responsible for all the reporting requirements for the county of Ventura. We produce, as the chief accountant, we produce the comprehensive annual financial reports for the county, the cost reports for the county, our single audit to the federal government. We also handle all of the debt service. County of Ventura has just north of $400 million issued in debt. Some of that's bond for the hospital replacement ring project over at VCMC, and some of that's just for annual prepayment of our pension requirement over to Visera. We also are responsible for the cash management, cash flow management. Obviously, for making payments for payroll and accounts payable, we need to have an understanding of what the cash position is for the county on a day-to-day basis. And so we also handle the cash management. We handle the internal audit function. That's part of the title, Auditor-Controller. Our internal audit function it's really what's mandated by the government code as well. We're required to provide to the Board of Supervisors and the constituents of the county audits of the operations of the county. So we produce on the it depends on, COVID. With COVID, it was a little slower to get audits out, but we produce probably 10 to 15 audits on an annual basis. And we go and we put annually, we put an audit plan together, take it to the Board of Supervisors, And based on that audit plan, and that audit plan is, we take a look at the risks to the county from different operations, and we take a look at, how often we've audited something, whether there's already a state or federal mandated audit of a project or a program, and we take a look at all that. We put together a plan, and every year we conduct the audits and report to the board on how we're doing. We don't do any financial audits. All the financial audits we hire from externally to do the audits for the County of Ventura. External accounting firms come in and they audit my office. So that's why I don't want to have, there's no conflict of interest there. We internally audit I know we had the treasurer tax collector here last week. We audit the treasury pool to ensure that the cash count is right, the cash that he is providing to the constituents and the board of supervisors of the cash is and to all the other taxing entities that keep their money in the pool, make sure that it's accurate. And so we conduct those audits. We also, and more important, I won't say more important, but of more interest to the taxpayers, we handle property tax section. I have about 7 staff in this office that handle the property tax, and I know I'm the last of the 3. I call it the big 3. We have Dan Goodwin as the assessor, who his office assesses the values of the properties here, or the APNs here in the County of Ventura. Once the roll is closed, Dan turns that roll over to my office, and then my staff assign the taxes for those individual parcels. Each parcel in the county has a different tax applied to it. Of course, there's Prop 13, the 1% AB8 general tax for property tax, but there's also many, there's 471 taxing entities in the County of Ventura. They all let this office, my office, know what their tax rates will be for the next year. It might be a lighting district, it might be a water district, it might be a streets improvement district, it might be a parks district, a city, and they let us know what their tax rate's going to be for the next coming year, and then we apply that rate to the assessed value. And once we're done doing that, we turn that over to the treasurer tax collector. He sends out the bills. People pay their property tax bills, and then he lets us know who's paid what based on their parcel. And then we in turn take that information and distribute that cash, that property tax that's been collected, out to those 471 taxing entities here in the county, as well as the state and some other jurisdictions around. So that's a pretty big task. It's about $1.7 billion a year that's collected that we distribute out. Roughly 50% goes to schools, and then it's broken down. 20% comes back to the county, 20% goes to each of the individual cities. Roughly, that's a generalization. And then the remaining 10% is allocated out to those districts as a lighting district, a water district, a roads district, something like that. So that's what our property tax section does. And that's in a nutshell what the office, all 76 county employees plus 4 or 5 consultants do on a daily basis for the constituents of the County of Ventura.
Thank you.
And I think you asked me, I think there was a fault, like, I think what my concerns were or issues, or was that, I'm sorry.
I was going to ask you, what are the challenges that your department is facing?
Oh my good, other than COVID, there's quite, and who knew that we'd be dealing with that and trying to not only provide disaster service workers to the county, but from this office. I mean, at one point in time, we probably had 76 employees, probably had 10% of those employees out serving as disaster service workers. So, and if I haven't said it, I'm going to say it now, and I'll say it again. I have wonderful staff in this office, and a clear show of that is when 10% of our staff, 7-8 of our staff are out, the rest of the staff pick up the slack, and we got the work done because we are mandated by law to get CAFRs out on time. We're mandated to get the payroll tax allocations out on time, to get the distribution. We're not mandated by law to get the distributions out to the taxing entities, but I can guarantee you that the $1.6 billion that we allocate back out to the county governments, they want that money. They need that money to provide those services, schools, cities, what have you. And so if we weren't quick at turning that around and getting that money out to them, they would in fact feel the pain of that. And so it's great to know that we have great staff that can deal with that, the COVID and everything else, and telework and everything that was involved in that. But on a day-to-day non-COVID concerns, it would be staffing. I mean, it's hard, you know, in this day and age. It's my bio, I teach at Cal Lutheran in the graduate program in the public policy program there at Cal Lutheran, and I can tell you, I can see the number of students that are going into that field dwindling and shrinking over time, and so it's becoming harder and harder to find really good, dedicated, qualified individuals that really have a compassion for service. You know, I'd like to tell people I'm not an elected official, I'm a public servant. And I mean that from the day I joined the military. And so I'm looking for that type of person to work in this office as well, someone that has a passion for it. Because some days we're here till, the other night we were here till 10 o'clock at night, working on, because we're getting the CAFR out. And whatever it takes to get the job done. And I hate to say, I don't see that dedication in some of the people that are applying for positions here. And that worries me. That worries me for the future.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for Mr. Berg for all that information. It's really important. At this time, we're going to open it up for questions and from the attendees, and I will turn it over to my assistant, Chelsea Satula, to facilitate the Q&A. Thank you, Chelsea.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Mr. Berg. Anybody that has questions, again, please send them in the chat directly to me. Our first question is whether or are there aspects of your work that could be automated?
Oh, definitely. You know, and a lot of our, I chuckle when I hear that question, because I started with the county a while ago, and I started as a payroll clerk. I started in probation as a payroll clerk. I was an accounting officer one. And my manager at the time said, you know, Jeff, if you're going to be a manager, you need to know all of the aspects of what goes on at the county and I think that's wonderful, and I agree 100%. And so my first 6 months working for the county, I was a payroll clerk for the probation agency. And back then we had little paper time cards, and they would fill out their time cards up, and PPS is what the payroll system was. And I see Cheryl kind of chuckling because I'm sure she had some PPS, but anyway, she was filling those out too. But they would fill them out, and then they'd all come to me, and I would look at them, I would enter them into the system, and I would do all that. And man, I tell you what, wow, what a colossal waste of time. I hate to say that. But fast forward to today, you know, we've implemented VCHRP, which is our online VCHRP HR and payroll system. And so the individual employees can go in and enter their time online. I mean, they can do it, you know, every day if they want. They can do it bi-weekly if they want, but they can go online, enter it. It automatically sends a message to the manager, hey, is the time card ready? You know, it's time to approve your time card. Go approve your staff's time card, and then they approve it. And so I guess my answer is yes. Through the automation of that payroll system, we have saved a tremendous amount of time for county employees just in filling out their time card. And we've also, when we upgraded the financial system for the county back in 2015, that was one of the, you know, my predecessor, Christine Cohen, kind of started that process to upgrade the financial system. And when she left and I took over, you know, I was able to carry that ball across the end zone, if that, for Super Bowl fans, across the line there. And we've gone to a paperless. We've instituted online approvals. Before, again, when I started with county, the approvals would come out of the financial system. You had to actually sign by pen. Paper was going all around the county, and now we've been able to automate that. And every day we're looking at new ways to automate things. Right now, I'm sure that the judge and Dan Goodwin, Assessor Goodwin, and Treasurer Taxer Judge Hintz mentioned the new property tax system that we have coming online here. Dan actually went, the assessor's office actually went live July 1st. We intend to go live this coming July 1st with the new integrated property tax system. And if you have a second, the old system was kind of siloed. We had the assessor system, we had the my system, and we had the treasurer tax collector system. And for the information to pass between the two was very cumbersome. I can remember, and I have actually pictures of this, Dan would come and bring me the disc that the closed roll was on, and we'd take a picture and I'd carry that down to IT and they'd load it into the system, and then we'd be able to do our allocation of the tax allocation. And again, what was frustrating to me was if I'm a taxpayer, and I am a taxpayer, but as a taxpayer had a question and they called my office, I couldn't answer an assessor's question on the assessment value of their property because that was in that silo. And so I would have to unfortunately say, sorry, we can't help you. Here's a number, please call the assessor's office, and they will be able to help answer that question. And then maybe they had a question that was for me. So then the assessor's office would pop back to me. Oh, my head exploded when you think about that process. This new system, the integration that we've built into this new system is so wonderful that my staff, if I get a call, my office gets a call, my staff gets a call for a tax question. Hey, why is the tax X on my assessed valuation? We can say, well, because that's what the district sent to us, da, 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 da. And then, well, what about my value? Why is that so high? We can look into the system. We don't have to pass them off, call this number, let me put you on hold. We can look into the system and answer a lot of those questions for them as well. So that's the beauty of this new system. That's, by July 1st, we should be ready to go, so that it will be fully integrated by next year or tax year. We'll be able to handle that. So yes, we are looking at every opportunity to update our systems, and hope I answered. I'm sorry I'm so long-winded.
No, that's great. Thank you. The next question is about auditing city governments, actually, and whether or not your office ever gets called in to help with that, and how city audits or investigations are initiated.
I will tell you this. I get called quite a bit to go audit cities, to audit special districts, water districts in particular. I do not have the authority to do that. Typically what I will do if I am asked to go audit city X, I direct that person to the state controller's office. The state controller, and in reality, I serve at the pleasure of the constituents of Ventura County. I am an independently elected official. The board can't really, and I say this with all due respect to the board, they can't tell me what to do. I'm an elected official. I can say no, I'm not going to do this. And if I have good reason, then I have good reason. I kind of report to the state controller. My reports, I talked about my CAFR, I talked about my cost allocation plan, I talked about my single, well, I have to provide those to the state controllers. There are deadlines I have to provide information to the state controller, or I get in trouble, the county gets in trouble. And it's the same with the cities. So when a city or someone in a constituent of a city asks me, hey, can you come in and audit my city because I think X, Y, or Z, I point them to the state controller. I have a contact up there, and Sandeep is a friend of mine, and I push them to Sandeep, and then Sandeep kind of helps them from there, and they go from there, and then they can direct them whether it needs to go to the state auditor, or to stay within the state controller's office, or if there's some issue, and this has happened in the past, it goes to the state attorney general's office. To take a look from a legal standpoint, from that standpoint. So that's what I would. So I really have, and that's my government code. I only have, per the government code, that establishes my office as the chief accountant for the county, says that I only have the ability to take a look at those, and I'm gonna butcher this quote, but I believe it says those agencies, departments that are under the direct authority of the Board of Supervisors or something like that. So that's where I get my power to audit.
Okay, and the next question is asking if you could actually explain who's doing your job at the state and federal level, and how those jobs are at different government levels are different from each other.
I tell you, for the state of California, it's State Controller Betty Yee. She is the current state controller who's doing her office produces all the payroll for all state employees. She's the one who puts out the CAFR for the state. She's the one who does a lot of the controller function of this office. State Controller Yee, that is a 4-year term as well. There are term limits on her office, though, on that office, the State Controller's office. So she actually will term out at the end of this term, and there will be a new State Controller in that office. You know, one of the things I did mention, and maybe I should have, and I'm going to jump back, and then I'll get back to this. You know, part of this job, I sit on, good gracious, I think 6 different committees. I'm on the ITC, the Information Technology Committee here at the County of Ventura. I'm on the Treasury Oversight Board Committee for here at the County of Ventura. I sit on the, I'm trying to think of what some of the other ones are, because and they're escaping me. I should have written them down somewhere. I'm looking at my notes and I don't have them, but there's a number of others. But one of them that I sit on, Betty Yee has appointed me to the State Accounting Standards and Policy Committee. And so I go to Sacramento, I Zoom. I've been Zooming the last few years, and I get together with a few other elected auditor controllers in the state. There's a couple of supervisors from the state. There's a couple of people from Controller Yee's office on this, and we go over what the accounting policy and the accounting standards will be for the state of California, because there again, she's responsible. She tells me what to do, and so as she's developing, I think it's wonderful. I want to hear from the voice of the stakeholders. I want to hear with the voice of the people that are boots on the ground doing the work, what works best. So she asked some of us to be on her little committee, and we kind of go over, hey, we're thinking about doing this. Hey, what about this? How have you thought about this? You know, what's the unintended consequences of that? What about, you know, and so we give that advice to her. So I said, I laughed. She's kind of like my boss from that standpoint. But then on the audit side, there is the state auditor. The state auditor is an appointed position. It's appointed by the legislator here for the state of California. And it is an appointed position, so there is no term limit. There is no, it's just a function of a state employee. And she just retired. Good gracious. So right now, I don't know who's doing it. But they are responsible for audit, going out. It's like I do the audits of the programs. It is that office's job to go out and audit the programs of the state of California. And so they take a look, issue audit reports on an annual basis of what they found. So yeah, and at the federal level, there's all kinds of OMB. There's all kinds of offices at the federal level, but Office of Management Budget. There's there's the I'm trying to think of the other office off the top of my head that because there is I think there is a federal controller. I hope I answered that question. That's the best I got. I'm sorry.
That's great. Thank you. And next question is, how, as voters, can we gauge the effectiveness of your office? Like, what would be on your report card for voters to score?
There are a couple things. There are a couple things I would do if as a constituent. One, if you took a look at the county budget, and you took a look at the county's budget for the Office of the Auditor Controller, and really the preliminary budget. I don't even know if the CEO has it in the budget. I know it's in the preliminary budget. But if you take a look at the section, and not just for my office, but for all offices, we have benchmarks and performance measurements assigned to, and I talked about general accounting, financial reporting, property tax, internal. I have benchmarks and performance measurements outlined for each of those various sections. And then we gauge ourselves, and you can see for the past 3 years how we've done based on what one of them might be for accounts payable. It might be that we turn a payables out in 10 days. Our goal is 100%, 10 days, get them turned around, and then we put in there what we attained over the last couple of years, and we kind of just roll it forward every year. Were we 100%? Were we 98%? How are we doing based on that stated goal of 100% turnaround 10 days? Payroll might be, getting the payroll out accurately, for, property tax. There for financial reporting, property tax is pretty easy because, as I said, I have mandated dates to get things out. So do we, what's the percentage of getting the information out on time, getting the reports to the feds, to the state, without missing the deadline, which have, I would say, I won't say dire consequences, but have consequences to the state, to the county of Ventura if those deadlines are met. One of the other things that I really push towards is the county's credit rating. You know, you hear a lot about that if you watch some board meetings, if you talk to CEO Michael Powers. You know, one of the things I take great pride in, and I know my staff do as well, and I know Mike, I won't speak for Mike Powers, but I know he does as well, is the credit rating for the county of Ventura. We have the highest credit rating that a municipality can attain. From Fitch, Moody's, Standard & Poor's, we have the highest credit rating. When the credit raters come in, which means that when we have, and I say we have over $400 million of bonds outstanding, 280 some odd million for the hospital replacement wing project over at VCMC, the other 100 and some odd million for various, you know, we prepay our pension. So we do I won't bore you with what trans and what that means and all this other stuff, but we prepay our pension. And so we borrow to prepay our pension about $180 million every year. And we turn that around and pay it off. What that means, having the highest credit rating, is we pay very little to borrow that money. Our bond interest rate is very low. Our trans, which is a tax revenue anticipation note interest rate, is very low. And that saves the constituents millions of dollars. And I won't say it saves the constituents millions of dollars. What it allows the county to do is and rather than spending millions of more dollars, because just imagine what half a percentage point would be on a $280 million bond, that money, it can now be used for, you name it, helping the homeless, food, police services, more behavioral health services, mental health services. That money can be used there rather than paying interest on a note that we have. So I take a lot of pride in that. And when the credit rating agencies come, they look at three things. They look at the county's budget. They look at the CAFR, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Statement, and they look at cash flows and cash utilization. If you remember what I talked about earlier, two of those three come from my office. Comprehensive Annual Financial Report and the cash flows. My office and my staff put those together and provide that to the rating agencies. So I know they take great pride in our credit rating being as low as it is because of the work they do on the cash flow projections and the cash flow, and as well as getting the CAFR out on time. I mean, we've received the talk around the office is who's going to be the unlucky. We've received the GFOA, Governmental Financial Officers Association's Standard Excellence Award in our CAFR for the last 35 years. So the fear is who's going to be the auditor controller that doesn't get it, and so it's like, whoa, man, So that's kind of the joke around the office. But I take pride in that too. For the past 30, not just this current staff, but prior staff for the past 35 years have just kicked it out, knocked it out of the park to get that done, and it shows in the credit rating. So if I was a constituent and I wanted to really gauge how well the auditor's office is doing, I take a look at that credit rating and where we're at in that credit rating, because that to me that is the gold standard. We are one of a few governmental entities that have that credit rating. Even within the state of California, we're one of the very few.
That's great. Other than that credit rating, are there any particular accomplishments or kudos of your office that you would like to point out to voters that you've had over the last year or so?
The GFOA award is a big time award that we receive. We get we're required to provide our what they call the state controller requires us to provide what they call a transaction report on an annual basis, and for at least the last 5 years, 6 years now, we've received the certificate for providing the transaction report on time and with no errors. That's pretty tough to get, so that's another kudos of staff. We're accountants and auditors, so ticking and tying comes pretty easy to us, and I've got a whiteboard and I'll put a T accounts up there and we'll do debits and credits all day long, and we kind of geek out on that sort of stuff. But when you can get an award for getting the accounting stuff right, that's important to us. That's pretty cool.
As the next question is, as an elected official of a nonpartisan office, how can the public be assured that your county office functions without ties to any political party?
That's a good question. I'm at a loss. I have to think about that for a minute. We're nonpartisan. I'm hard pressed to see how our office is pretty black and white. It's debits and credits. Those of you that know and you've been to board meetings, when you come into the Board of Supervisors for a meeting, there are 5 members of the board at the dais. Mike Powers sits, the CEO of the county, sits at the dais, and myself on the left-hand side and county council on the right-hand side sit at that dais with them. And we are there to ensure that policies are followed. I don't set policy. This office doesn't set policy. It's not my job to comment on policy. It's my job to say, what is the established policy? And then we go and audit that policy. Or is that policy being followed? Because at the end of the day, if the Board of Supervisors, who are elected by the constituents, enacted a policy or a procedure, it's my job and my staff's job to ensure that it is followed to the letter. And if it's not, then to make the constituents and the Board of Supervisors aware that that policy is not being followed. And then from there, I don't want to say I wash my hands of it, but then from there, okay, now engage in that conversation, board, community. I've in my time here at the auditor's office, I've issued some reports that were pretty, I've made front news on the paper. I can, and I'm not going to hash them out now, but front page, top of the fold, some of my reports have, and I can guarantee you that there were some people that worked for the County of Ventura that did not like to see that headline, top of the fold. But I don't care what your political affiliation is. We're going to follow the law. We're going to follow the policy. And we're going to put it out. So that's. I served in the military for 6 years. I can call it out. I call it as I see it from that standpoint. I don't have any fear about whatever the fallout may be.
Okay, next question is, how does a common citizen benefit from your job well done, or how are they hurt by a job poorly done? You kind of touched on this before about how your office is saving taxpayers money, but if you could just kind of break it down for the common citizen, how your job impacts them on a daily basis.
When it goes to the credit rating, as I explained a little bit earlier, if our credit rating suffered because things weren't accounted for properly, then the interest rate would be higher, and that would be less money out of the general fund to do general things. One of the things I really didn't talk about is, my office also handles the fraud hotline. We have here at the County of Ventura, we have a 24/7 fraud hotline that for waste, fraud, and abuse. And so people are calling, and we audit and we investigate those calls. Every single call we investigate. They may be found to be, it may be found to be unfounded. I'm sorry, that's not proper grammar, but it may turn out that it's an unfounded allegation. But we investigate every call that comes into the fraud hotline call. And again, there are people who are in jail and or on probation as we speak because of an investigation that was handled because of the fraud hotline. So there again, having that fraud hotline there saves the constituents dollars that could be wasted through fraud, waste, or theft. From that standpoint. So that's another way that to tell the constituents that their dollars are being cared for and monitored.
Okay, I don't see any other questions, so I would like to turn it back over to Pat Essek for a few concluding remarks. Thank you.
Well, before we end this interview, is there anything that you would like to add that we have not covered?
I'd say hi to Cheryl. That's that's
Okay.
about. No, I appreciate your time very much. I think this was a great, as an educational this is wonderful. I'm glad it's taped. I mean, I wish that this was done more often. This is really I think a benefit to the constituents who could watch this, just to understand what's going on with the county. And I applaud you for doing that. I thank you for having me on today.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Berg, for joining us today to help us better understand the role and responsibilities of the Office of County Auditor and Controller. We really appreciate all the information that you've shared with us and having the opportunity to just meet you. So thank you.
Thank you.
And now I'd like to remind everyone that next Wednesday, we will be meeting at the same time and place and hearing from County Supervisor Linda Parks. This will be our final lunch interview. And as a reminder, recordings of this session and all past ones will be available through our website. You can find the link to our website in the chat. One last comment. The California League encourages voters and candidates to make use of its nonpartisan online guide called Voter's Edge to learn about the priorities of candidates as well as the explanations of ballot initiatives and referendums. Thanks to everyone for attending today, and we look forward to seeing you all again next week. This concludes today's presentation. Thank you.